Okay, so today we're going to be modeling a water bottle in Autodesk Maya. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new scene. So if you haven't, it says File, New Scene, or Control N. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to create a free image plane, and the point of the free image plane is that we're going to be tracing the outline of the water bottle, and we're going to be modeling the water bottle based on our reference image. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click Create. Then free image plane. Unfortunately, some of the pop-up menus might not show up on the screen recording, but I'm creating the free image plane by going at the top over here and create free image plane. And you can see this over here. We have this, and then over here I'm going to go into the attribute editor on the side, and I'm going to scroll down to find image name. And I already downloaded this image of a water bottle, which is this water bottle outline, like a front view of it. Just going to select it. I'm going to click open, and then now you can see over here you can see that it's in our view over here. I can just scale it to make it a little bigger. Yeah. So the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to be creating a cylinder, because we can generally see that the overall shape of a water bottle kind of looks like a cylinder. So we're just going to create a cylinder over here. I'm going to press the spacebar while my mouse is in the viewport, and I'm going to press spacebar over here. I'm going to move my mouse to the front -Z plane over here, you can see, and this is basically the orthographic views of our objects. This is the perspective view, it's in 3D. Everything else over here is flat, so you can't really change the perspective of the orthographic views. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to shading over here, and then I'm going to click X-ray. So now you can kind of see it's a little faded, and it might be easier to see if we click over here. So it's basically like a wireframe shading mode, so while we're not selecting the item, it's still easy to see what's going on. So we also have to make sure we don't accidentally move the background image, the reference image that we have right now. So just make sure you don't select on that by accident when you're selecting the object. So you can see over here that as we move this object in all of the views, it actually changes. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to go back here, and then we're going to hold right click. So holding right click is usually for specifically modifying and editing and manipulating vertices or the faces, or setting a new material. So what we're going to do is we're going to let's first scale it actually before we do that, and we're just going to kind of make it so that the cylinder covers the entirety of the water bottle, only up to the rim over here. So not the entire water bottle, but only like the body of the water bottle. So we'll just do that over here. I'm going to press F. I'll select it, press F, and that will actually focus it so that it's the center of my screen. Just going to move it up. Yeah, you can kind of see that edges seem okay. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hold right click, and holding right click will allow us to manipulate the vertices, and then we're going to select vertex. Okay, so at first you don't really see that much. I think what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to hold and left click, drag, select, and I'm just going to move this a little down. So we have this vertex loop. It's like a loop. If you see over here, it's an entire loop around this. I'm just going to select that entire loop, and then I'm just going to drag it down. So I'm going to use these normal manipulators over here to move them. So it's right before there's this extrusion over here. We're not going to worry about that yet. So, and then I'm going to look at the bottom. Then I'm just going to make sure it's directly underneath that. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm going to focus it over here. So now I'm going to add these extra types of bends, because the water bottle kind of bends over here. It has a little, like the edges kind of vary. So I'm going to first move this down, then I'm going to select this tool, multi-cut tool. Multi-cut tool will allow me to add edges anywhere on this mesh that we have over here. So the first edge I'm going to add is over here. I don't think I'll need to add another edge. I think I might add one further down. Yeah, so I'm going to add one over here. I'm going to add one right there. I'm just going to select these so I can focus on that. And then I'm going to go back to the multi-cut tool. I'm going to add a few more. So I'm going to add one over here. I'm going to add 3 over here because there's an indentation in the water bottle. Okay, then I'm going to add another one over here. So I'm basically going to be adding an indentation, 3 per indentation in the water bottle. I'm going to make sure I try to align it with everything else. Okay, yeah, so now you can see if I go to the object mode, you can now see over here that we added these lines over here. Yeah, so you can see these lines and indentations. So this is only for the top part. So now we have to do the rest of the water bottle. So I'm going to focus over here, hold right click, select vertex. I'm going to add some more using the multi-cut tool. I'm going to hold control so I can add these edge loops. I'm going to add one over here. I'm going to add one over here. Kind of everywhere, but just before an edge or just when the water ball shape itself is changing, I'm going to be adding loops. I'm going to add one right here, and then I'm going to add one here. Yeah, I think that should be good enough. You can add extra to increase the resolution, but I think for now, it seems like it's pretty good. So I'm going to hold right click, go back to object mode. I'm going to go back to the selection mode over here. Now if we see over here, oops, yeah, so we can see that. You can see all these edges. These are, and we're basically going to be manipulating each of these. So now if I go over here, hold right click, go to vertex, I'm going to select this top vertex loop. I'm going to press F to focus on it. Then I'm going to click the scale tool, and I'm going to actually scale this. Well, always make sure to do the center one, the center box over here. Click that when you're scaling. Do not scale with this, even though it might look like it fits over here. It will only be scaling that axis. It won't be scaling both axes. So let me just Control Z. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to use the center one to scale in everything. So I'm basically tracing the water ball in a way. So you can kind of see that how this is kind of like the outline of the water ball. And then here in the center I'm going to add the ridge. So you can slightly see over here there's a ridge. It's this. I'm just selecting that and I'm going to pull it in slight. I can also, another way we can do this is that I can select all the ridges at the same time. So I can also select this one, and then I can select that one, select that one, I think. Yeah, I think that's it. So you can see over here I'm selecting each of these center ridges, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and I'm going to inward. This is another way, but I think what I'll do is we'll just do it individually. I think that might be more straightforward. So let's do that. So let's just individually move each of these. We're going to scale each of these kind of inward. So I'm going to highlight this so I can focus on it. You can also hold down the middle mouse button if you have a 3-button mouse to pan the view. That might be easier. And then I'm just going to select each of these and I'm going to scale them inward. Okay. So now over here, once I'm done with the ridges, I'm going to go here and I'm going to select this loop and I'm going to, now over here the water ball is kind of bending inward, so I'm just selecting that and moving everything in. And actually if I remove the X-ray, it's kind of clearer to see what I'm doing over here. I'm kind of making it more narrow. So let me turn back X-ray on so I can see through it. I'm going to select this and I'm going to scale inward. I'm going to scale that here. I think this is okay. Then I'm going to scale this a little more. And then finally, this is the last part of the water ball over here. And then I'm going to just move it a little up actually. I think that might look a little better. Move it up, yeah. Okay, so now we're done with this part. So if I go over here, we already have created this shape, which is kind of like the water ball itself, the main water ball part. We're not done yet though with that part. So next, you can see this. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start actually adding a few more things to it. So we're going to hold, so we're actually going to make the top part of it. So we're going to hold, right click, select vertex. Let's go over here. Let's focus on that. And you can also see over here, this is the top part. So the first thing we have to do is we just have to make sure this is aligned properly. Then we're going to hold right click and select face. So now if I go to the perspective mode, I'm going to select the top face. Press F to focus, and then I'm just going to select all these faces. So this is so now what we're going to do after we select all these faces is we're going to extrude upwards to create the narrow neck part of the water ball. So once we have all this selected, we're going to go and select the extrusion tool. As you can see over here, if you don't know what a certain tool does, you can just like hover your mouse over it and you'll be able to see a slight description of it. So once we click that, we're going to increase this. I'll go over here. Actually, instead of that, let's actually go back to perspective and then scale it down. So the way I scaled it is I first clicked on one of these boxes and then I was able to scale with the middle square, kind of like our normal scale tool, but this is for extrusion. So we can kind of slightly adjust this based on how thick the neck is compared to the other part of the bottle. And then from here, we're going to click the extrusion tool again. So we extrude only from that face so we can see this. So now we've created this part. Now we're going to extrude again actually only to the tip of that part. I'm going to focus by pressing F, okay, and then I think I'll just move this up. I'm going to extrude one more time. Yeah. I'm going to extrude one more time over here. Right here. So now you can see that we've made this part of the water ball over here. Let's just make sure this is aligned properly. Yeah, about there. Because the cap will be covering the rest of it. You can also increase a little more. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is that we already know that there's this ring, this part of the water ball where the ring of the water ball cap sits on. So we're going to hold, or we're going to click one of these over here, and then we're going to hold shift and then double click on the next one to select the entire loop of the face loop, basically all the faces. And then we're going to click extrude. So you can see over here both of the views. I'm going to click extrude and I'm going to select this one. So it's extruding outward. And then I think it's easier if we can kind of see this. So it would, yeah, be like that. So then we kind of extruded this outward over here. Okay. Hold right click, go back to object mode. And so far we've created this. Okay, so now once we've already modeled out this water ball, this part of the water ball, actually just right now what it is, I scaled the edges a little in further, so it's a little more pronounced. Because the next thing we're going to do is we're now going to start to smoothen the mesh. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this over here. I'm first going to save everything, and then, yeah. So first, if you want to save, just press Control S. Go to wherever you want to go. Let's say the scenes folder. I'm going to say water ball. Okay. I'm going to save it as a Maya binary file, MB file for now. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select this. We're going to click the smoothen button, and we're going to only keep it at one division. Okay. So now this is how it kind of looks like over here. If we remove this, you can kind of see this is kind of how the shape of it looks like right now. Kind of looks like the source image. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the top. We can kind of see this part is smoothened at the top. I'm going to go press the space bar to move to the other view, and then I'm going to select the top over here, focus in on it, and I'm going to hold my left click and drag it, and then I'm going to click the scale tool, and this is basically to flatten the top and also make it a little bigger, because the problem was that when we smoothened it, some parts we didn't want to get smooth or smoothened, and some parts we want it to be a little harder edge, not smoother edge. So I'm also going to select this edge over here. I'm going to focus in on it, and then I'm going to hold double click on it, and then I'm going to slightly scale it. Yeah, I'm going to slightly scale it inward. So it's not too pronounced of a curve. So now we're mainly done with the bottle part of the water bottle. Now we have to do the cap. So we have to first do the ring of the water bottle, and the ring of the water bottle is a separate object from the entire water bottle itself. It's on the water bottle, but it's a separate object. So we're going to be creating a new type of cylinder over here. So you can also create a pipe tool, a pipe mesh, but instead of that, we're just going to be using a normal cylinder. It's going to go over here. I'm going to scale this inwards, and then I'm going to scale it down. So if we look over here, we can kind of see how it should look like. think what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the water ball, select the edges of the water ball. There seems to be kind of like a curved surface over here, and then then I'm going to scale that. Yeah, so once I scale this, you can kind of see it looks less curved over here. It's a little more straight. I'm going to select these, and then I'm going to scale it a little bit. Yeah. So now I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to move this a little down, kind of creating the ring of the water ball. Scale it a little up, scale it a little outward so it's more pronounced, and move it up. So everything should be symmetrical so far. I'm just gonna scale this a little outward, kind of like that. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of smoothen it. We're first gonna give it a bevel. The bevel tool is over here. And this will create an extra edge, extra edges on the top and the bottom. So I'm gonna adjust the fraction size. Yeah, so you can kind of see how the bevel works over here. So I'm going to make it about 0.2, approximately 0.2. I'm going to increase it. I think that looks okay. I'm going to increase the subdivision access to kind of make it a little smoother. I think this looks okay. Yeah. So then I'm going to select smoothen object with only one division. Now you can see we created the ring of the water ball. Now if we need to, we can scale it a little up, we can move it a little down, and I think that this is it for the ring of the water ball. So now if we go back over here and we remove this, we kind of see how this looks like so far. So now we've basically done the main water ball part, and we also did the ring of the water ball. So the next part we have is the cap. So to do the cap, we're gonna let's go back to the X-ray, and it's also similar to the water ball ring where it's a separate object. It's not connected to the water ball itself. So we're gonna create another cylinder. I'm gonna scale this a little inwards. I'm gonna scale it like that. I'm gonna move this a little up. Kind of like this. Okay, now if we kind of see over here, this is how it kind of looks like so far. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to hold right click, select vertex, and I'm going to kind of make it look like the design of this water ball, which is in our source image. I'm going to stretch it a little outwards. I'm going to stretch this also slightly outwards. I'm going to go back to object mode, and then I'm going to add a bevel to it. So we can see over here kind of how the bevel is going to look like. So if we go over here, yeah, I can increase the segments of it, kind of make it a little smoother. I can also increase the fraction size of it. I'm going to kind of make it like this. I'm going to select outside of it to stop the edit mode of the bevel and go back to the selection mode, and now you can see we've created the cap itself. I'm going to scale this a little upward, move it a little down. Yeah. So now I'm going to smoothen this. So just as we did with the ring and the bottle itself, I just select this and then I click over here the smoothen tool. The smooth tool. It kind of makes it smooth. Yeah. Okay. So the last step is that if you want to, you can add additional details such as the bottom of this water ball has ridges. So if you want to do that, you can add some more. You can also make the ridges in the middle of the water bottle more pronounced over here by just selecting the faces, which over here, and selecting the face loops. But overall, I think that we're done with this water bottle. So yeah, so for the next part, for coloring, we'll be actually adding materials to this water bottle in Unity. So I think this is it for the water bottle modeling tutorial, and thank you for listening.